Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. In today's episode, we're going to talk about different kinds of content strategy and marketing strategy, how you choose one if you so choose, and whether or not you really need one. My goal for you by the end of this episode is to understand how to tie your own business goals into what your clients and customers need and want from you. All right. Are you ready to get into this? Me too. I was recently chatting it up with two of my business pals, Lisa and Alicia, and one of them, they are also fellow podcasters, and one of them brought up a post that they had seen, I think on Instagram, or maybe it was a podcast, that they'd heard where a woman broke down these two types of content strategies. Basically, she was like, there is community building content strategy and client attraction content strategy. And I think all three of us had like the exact same reaction. We were like, wait, that's not all the options. That's like saying there are only two ice cream flavors that you're ever going to get to indulge in for the rest of your life, and you have to choose out of those two. It's not quite so binary, I don't think, when it comes to choosing a strategy, when it comes to thinking about a strategy. And there are lots of reasons that you might choose one over another. There are lots of varieties, flavors, toppings, and layers therein. It's more like an ice cream sundae where the possibilities are endless. So I'm not here to make things complicated. I am here to make them easier. So in this episode, I'm going to show you just four potential content marketing strategies, and then help you decide which one is right for you. And my real goal here is to debunk the word strategy if it is one that feels awful or uncomfortable or dreadful to you, or like it's going to take too much time to sit down and focus on. And I also want to help you tie the strategy in with what your business needs, but also where your clients are at, because I think we can do both. I don't think that strategy is just a one-way street. You know, I'm always saying that content is a bridge, and I think that strategy is part of that bridge. It's like the handrail to the bridge, if you will. All right. So for those of you who find the word strategy just like, no way, can't put baby in the corner, let me out. Like I said, I have a solution for you too. But before we get into the episode, I want to take 1 minute, let's say, because it's not going to be a second, to introduce myself in case you're new here. And also thank you so much for listening and also leaving me reviews. I cannot believe my eyes as I'm reading these reviews for the podcast so far. 5 stars. It's like people are throwing confetti with their words and giving me just like really, really big hugs. I feel the love all the way through that little Apple podcast app. So here's an example of what I mean from listener Aaron. I want more episodes. Content with Character kicked off with some strong episodes. I found myself nodding my head, smiling at the examples, and overall just wanting more to listen to. This is a must-follow show if you want to improve your content and be a good business owner and human. Great job, Emily. Aaron, you are in luck. Here is another episode for you. But seriously, to Aaron and to everyone who has been leaving me reviews, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Reviews help me as I stay motivated and in this and like feeling like I'm not just doing it alone, even if I am sitting at home alone right now behind myself, behind a microphone. And it also helps me feed that little Apple Podcast, God's ravenous hunger for reviews. So when you're done listening today, if you feel so inclined, I would love to welcome your review and your positive feedback on the Apple Podcast app. To find it, you go to this podcast main page, scroll down till you see the 5 stars, click the little pencil icon-y thingy or the 5 stars, and then tap away. Sometimes it's confusing and hard, so let me know if you get stuck. I always send a little video, happy to help you out. Also, if you don't know me yet, hi, hello. I should have introduced myself. I'm Emily Aborn. I'm a content copywriter, a podcaster, and the leader and founder of She Built This, which is a women's entrepreneurship community. as well as my other podcast. I have one husband, Jason, and one dog, Clyde, and I live in the backwoods of New Hampshire where I can often be found dodging mosquitoes in the woods or dunking in a lake during my absolutely favorite season of all, summertime. I love books, listening to podcasts, doing the New York Times spelling bee, pretty much any other word puzzle. My brother-in-law is actually trying to get me hooked on cryptic crosswords right now, but I think that they might be a little too advanced for me. I will report back to you on that one. And if you have any tips on them, send them my way. All right, enough about me. If you want to know more, if you're like, oh my God, I'm so curious, then you can just visit EmilyAborn.com. But for now, I want to talk more about you, and I want to talk about your content strategy, or perhaps, as of now, lack thereof. We hear the word strategy a lot in the online space, referring to a lot of different things. And it's one of those words that I think gets really, really overused, and it actually starts to kind of like lose its meaning, lose its depth. So to just quickly define it, it's a plan. It's a plan of intention or action designed to achieve a goal or objective. So when you're talking about content specifically, it's actually taking the audio that you're sharing, the visual that you're sharing, the written content that you're sharing, and using that to achieve a goal. And I want to say that goal is both for you, the business owner, and also for your audience. And I always want us to keep the people that we are speaking to in mind, like regardless of what topic we're talking about. When it comes to the word strategy, I think that some people can find it like, ick, it's putting me in a box, or it's trapping, or it makes me feel stuck. And so if that's you, maybe you try swapping out that word strategy with the word intention or focus or direction. All of those are great replacements. Now, at first, when you're first starting out, you might actually not be using a lot of strategy. And I'm actually going to get into a little example of that at the end of the show. But if you're still learning the ropes and figuring out like how to run a business, you might still be figuring out what works and what doesn't work strategy-wise. So you might end up throwing lots of spaghetti at lots of walls to see what sticks. But as you move along in your journey as an entrepreneur, as you start to get clear on your message, you start to define your offerings, you start to really understand like who you want to work with, who you speak to, then you start to feel a little bit less all over the place. And I think when it comes to that, when you get to that point, it can be really helpful to have a strategy in place, a plan. Now, I want to break down what a strategy can and can't do because it's not like a cure-all for your business, okay? A strategy can help you to take consistent action every day towards your goals. Check. A strategy can help you to stay focused and streamlined in your messaging. Check. A strategy can help you to experiment, have the data and the information so that you can reassess what works and what doesn't work. And a strategy can, contrary to common belief, it can actually help you to feel inspired. And I'll get more into that in a later episode, but in my experience and opinion, I find that inspiration often comes down when I sit down and follow the plan or start to implement what I've decided to do. So when I actually start taking the action, inspiration starts to roll in. We'll talk about that another time. Strategy can't do this, okay? Strategy doesn't work on its own. So when you have a plan in place, like you actually have to follow the plan in order for it to work. It doesn't just work on its own. Otherwise, it's like having directions to a destination, but no actual way to get there, like no car, no bike, no skateboard. So strategy doesn't work on its own. Strategy is not the solution to any internal fears that you have around visibility and being seen, or any blocks you have around accepting money, or any feelings like, I'm so annoying to people when I market myself, or charging what you're worth. Like, even when you have a strategy in place, even when you have the most perfect, beautiful, shiny plan, you still have to work through these things. Like, these are internal issues, okay? These are things a strategy cannot fix. Also, with a plan, you have to remember that it's like a loose outline. It's not so rigid. And I'll use myself in college as an example. When I was in college, I had every moment of every single day of my life planned out to a T. And when something happened that threw me off. It like ruined me. So when you have to remember that, think back to 2020, right? Like the best laid plans. Even when you have a plan or strategy in place, you have to remember that it's important to be malleable, roll with the punches, pivot, make changes, which is why you might not go 5 years into the future so detailed. You might just go like a day of detail or a week of detail. We'll get into that a little bit too. But think of it like if you're on a highway and traffic is backed up for like 17 miles, you might want to grab that exit and take a back road instead. Or you might grab that exit and go get lunch until traffic is cleared up. Or you might turn around entirely and go home. That's probably what I would do. Strategy is not like a perfect science. And I think that's often what we think. Okay, I'll just implement this strategy and everything in my business will be magical. If only I had a strategy, I would be golden. And I'm telling you, it still takes working on it. It still takes your own inner work. And it also takes being aware of the other person on the side of your strategy. And it takes an ability to be able to pivot and roll with the punches. Okay, so thinking of what strategy you actually will choose, I think that it comes from the outside and also the inside. So from the inside, okay, what works best for you? Like what actually will be working best for you? What is feasible for you, reasonable for you? What feels best to you? And then it also has to come with information from the outside. And that is like listening to your community. What do they need? What would serve them? What would help them to feel seen, heard, understand? So that's kind of how you would think through each of these 4 strategies in making your choice as to which one might be the right fit for you. And there are a lot more than 4 types of strategies for your content marketing. Okay. There are way more than 4. And like I said, they're all like multi-layered and multifaceted and are going to break down in different ways. These are the 4 I came up with that I sort of was able to like categorize and that I thought would be most relevant to you. But I just want to let you know that there are like way more than 4 and you might call it something else. All right, so here are the 4 types. Strategy number 1 is the brand awareness strategy. This strategy is a good fit for increasing your visibility as a business owner or individual. So essentially your goal here would be to get people like really, really familiar, comfortable, knowing, liking, trusting your brand and business. You're going to want to make them aware of who you are, what you do. You want them to like you, trust you, et cetera, et cetera. If you go back to last week's episode on the content framework that I shared, I give you like the 4 different sort of categories of content. And a brand awareness strategy would focus a lot on educational content, foundational content, and then that sunshine content, the inspirational, motivational, encouraging, personal, connective, engaging. You're going to focus less heavily on the promotional stuff, but don't think you're entirely off the hook if you're like, ooh, good, I don't like to promote myself. I'll just go with the brand awareness strategy. Perfect. You're not totally off the hook because you do need to sprinkle in promotional content into any strategy you choose. Like we are always in business to make money, right? And don't quote me on that. Maybe you don't need to promote or lift a finger on that at all and you still make money, but primarily, I do think that you're going to have to sprinkle a little bit of promotional into any of these, but you will be focusing primarily on that community building, that relationship building, that nurturing content. I think that this one is where I most often fall. And I've been at this for 5 years now, but I am kind of just now starting to really work on increasing the awareness of what I'm doing, giving really helpful, generous education with my content. Like I'm focusing on lots and lots of helpful content. And I try to be positive and inspiring most of the time. I build relationships with people first and foremost, above all else. That is really my focus. And in addition to that, the way that I share promotional content, and this would apply to you too if you're in that brand awareness category, the way that I share promotional content is a little bit more like, hey, here's what I'm super excited about. Here's how you can like kind of come into my world and be part of what I'm creating. So just to give you a little help on how that might actually look. And one thing I want to say is when you decide what sort of strategy you're going to use, it really helps you to know like what tasks in your business are most important to focus on. So for example, in this brand awareness strategy, my website, which is a huge part of my brand, and it's where I put a lot of content. It was a shizer show until recently. I won't get into that whole story right now, but suffice it to say, no good. So I knew one of the steps in my brand awareness strategy, one of the tasks I needed to focus on was working on my website. And I also know that writing educational blog posts, connecting with people through my emails, that's really important for me in this strategy. Like, I want my brand awareness to be so strong that when someone sees a dandelion or the content with character icon, or even reads a sentence that sounds like me, I want them to say, that has Emily Aborn written all over that. And with that, either they're going to connect with that really strongly, or if it's not their flavor, they walk away. So in this strategy, you'll also use a lot of storytelling. It might be your personal stories. It might be stories that help people to connect with your brand, but you are going to use probably a little bit more of that storytelling sort of content. Like, your goal here is really connection and creating the awareness and helping to make your people feel seen and understood, and also helping them to see and understand you. Another example of how this might look in real life is if you had a nurture sequence for a freebie on your website. It might be a little bit more like, hey, I'm introducing myself. Here are my fun facts. Here is my helpful tip. Here's how I help. Here's another way we can stay in each other's world, like outside of email. Here's another place to access my content. Outside of content, let's say you are focusing your marketing on connecting with people, okay? So you might be focusing here on connecting one-to-one with people and helping them understand what you do and helping understand what they do, building those relationships. You might attend a lot of networking events, meet new faces, give a lot of presentations and workshops, and be a guest on other people's podcasts. Can you see how all of those things, all of those actions, all of those pieces fall under that brand awareness strategy? All right. Are you ready for another one? The lead generation strategy. Now, hear me out, because we're probably all doing some form or fashion of lead generation. As I said, all of these strategies are like little ice cream sundaes, okay? They're multi-layered, multifaceted, very flavorful. But focusing primarily on lead generation with your strategy is a little bit different than just that brand awareness, okay? Lead generation is where you're really looking to grab the attention of your potential buyers. Look at me, scoop up their contact information, and then you want to convert them into leads and paying clients. I think what I want to say about this one is that it probably takes a little bit more of a concrete plan. It probably takes a little bit more content in general, more regular frequent ongoing communication, and you also will spend time constantly, or I guess I'm going to say consistently, nurturing relationships with your prospects. So you might have some sort of system in place for that. It's really a little bit more focused on promoting the majority of the time. So some examples of how you might actually implement this are, with those downloadables or on your website, or you're offering exclusive content to people, right? That they only can get in exchange for their email address and getting on your email list. And when you see a nurture sequence from the person utilizing this strategy, it is a little bit more of that funnily feeling. I mean, I think that there's a way to do it without that feeling, but it is a little bit more of a sales-focused conversion style email after you go to their website and get that 3 things every website needs downloadable, right? The second thing that springs to my mind is doing webinars and summits and other online events. And again, you can think about how much more promotion is actually involved in getting people to the free thing in the first place, and then surrendering their precious email. But also at the end of those, and you've probably been in one, there's typically like that direct sell, and you're also probably in a follow-up sequence after that, which is very much focused on converting you from whatever workshop or webinar you were just in or summit. So this is about building your list, building your network of connections, and probably your referral partners too is going to be really, really important here, and getting people in the door to working with you. And here's where that client attraction strategy, remember I said like at the beginning, there were like just two that woman said. This is kind of where that would be kicking in. Okay. Third strategy, third one. I see this being done quite a bit actually, especially as of late. And this is the thought leadership strategy. Who pops into my mind here? Let's see. Maddie Woodard on Instagram, Mel Robbins, Sarah Blakely, Gary Vee. These are the ones like off the top of my head. Now, these folks all do have something to offer you, but they primarily use out-of-the-box thinking, expertise, authority building. That's the kind of content they're sharing throughout their marketing strategy to get you where they want you to go. They dive into helpful content. They give their own thoughts and their opinions. They share a lot of research, and they're building that reputation and credibility. You can see how a thought leadership strategy requires a lot of consistency, and not just consistency in generating content, also a lot of consistency in being creative and having those out of the box opinions and ideas, and also probably a lot of research. And I will add to that, like in order to be someone who is creating this constant churn of thought-provoking content, you need to know what people on the other side, what thoughts and feelings they're having in order to create for them. So you need to deeply understand like what conversations are happening in your industry, what conversations are happening with your ideal clients. You need to be engaging, most likely, with the members of your audience. Thought leadership might be thought of as like somebody, sometimes I think we think of, it's somebody way up on their pedestal, all high and mighty. But in actuality, I think it really takes a person who is willing to roll up their sleeves, sit down next to you, and listen to what people are experiencing so they can meet them and help where they are. My friend Karen Kenney, she's a spiritual mentor, and she has a podcast fittingly called The Karen Kenney Show. And I think she uses a lot of this thought leadership type of content. She definitely does make people aware of her products and services, but a lot of what she provides people in her podcasts is a chance to say, I never thought of it that way, or I will have to pay closer attention to that about myself from now on. She takes the personal, like everyday stuff, the things people are experiencing in their everyday, and shows you like the spiritual lesson in it, the moral, the takeaway, and gets you to think about it differently. Now, one thing I happen to know about Karen Kenney, and if you listen to her podcast, I'm not talking out of turn here, she's said it on her show, but if you listen to her podcast, she's shared that she's working on a memoir. So you can see how that thought leadership strategy really makes sense for her to utilize, because that's where she's going to be guiding people to when that book is out and published. Okay. We are almost done. We have one more to go, and hopefully you've already started kind of mentally saying like yay or nay to one or more of these. Every strategy is not right for everyone, and only you can choose the one that is right for you, or a mixture of the one that is right for you. So the fourth one that I wanted to talk about is customer retention strategy. And I think of this as it applies to a couple different folks. It might be for you if you offer something that people like keep on coming back for. They keep on buying it, or clients that you work with on an ongoing basis. So for me, I might write a website for somebody, and then when they come back to me for more blogs, and then more blogs after that, and then their welcome packet, and then more portfolio pages on their website. That's kind of what I mean. That's like a customer retention focus. Now, I don't focus my strategy on that, but that's just an example of what I mean by customer retention. You might be a service provider who works with retainer clients, which you're actually retaining them, and they pay you monthly for a certain service. Or you might sell a physical product like chocolates or mugs or clothing, and you really want to retain the same customers. You want people buying a pair of shoes from you for life, okay? Not just one time. You want loyal fans and followers and repeat purchases. You can see how this strategy is going to be one part lead generation and client attraction. Like first you have to get people in the door, right? And then you're going to focus a lot of the content you create, a lot of your marketing on the people that you've brought into the door. And that's going to involve things like really solid welcoming and onboarding materials, like really nurturing content that is focused on what your existing customers need, making sure that they are the first ones to know when there's something new and exciting or interesting. And it might even look like creating special content for those people. Let's say like in the example of maybe a membership. So your content strategy is going to be largely focused on those you already have while discovering more about who tends to be your buyer. So like you're going to really be learning about the people that you work with so that when you do generate outward content, when you are doing outward facing marketing content, you can speak right to those same kinds of people. The other thing about customer retention is that it is pretty focused on staying top of mind. Like, I don't know if you've ever signed up for something like Michaels or Ann Taylor Loft, but they are consistently sending you emails very, very regularly to make sure that they stay top of mind. And next time you need a shirt, a top, you are choosing them. Or some beads or glue, So that is kind of what this customer retention strategy is focused on, is staying top of mind, which does require quite a bit of regularity and also consistency. So that's number 4. So just to recap them all one more time, brand awareness, lead generation, thought leadership, and customer retention. And I'd love for you to just think about like, which one feels really good for me? Also, which one speaks to the kind of person that I'm trying to work with? Which one is a good fit for the kind of clients that I work with, the way that I've structured my business? Now, what all of these strategies could include is social media. They could include email. They could include podcasts. They could include video, blogging, SEO, website copy, lead magnets, opt-ins, networking, branding, speaking, like tons of things. So you can see that's kind of what I was talking about. There are many, many layers to any strategy that we choose. And it can feel like a lot. It can feel overwhelming, which is why I want to make this part really, really easy for you, no matter which one of these 4 felt right for you, no matter whether you're making a mixture of them or you found something else that works better. No matter which one you choose, I just want to suggest 2 things. Number 1, consistency. And I'm going to be getting into this more next week. But when I say consistency, I do not mean frequency. I don't mean burning yourself out by going faster or more often. I don't mean posting every day or 6 times a day. I just mean showing up regularly and taking these action steps in your plan on a regular basis. You choose what consistency looks like for you. And again, we're going to talk more about that next week. The second thing I suggest is repurposing. Repurposing can be used in all of these strategies, and it will save you a heck of a lot of time and headache. If you start thinking about repurposing when you sit down to map out your plan, it's going to be so much easier for you. So, for example, when I sit down to create this podcast, when I create the outline for this podcast, in my head, I've already figured out how to turn it into a blog. Then I already have an email to go with it. I already have the social media post it breaks down to. So you can see like I have one piece of content. I'm just taking one piece of this. And my strategy, part of my brand awareness strategy, is to repeat that message over and over and over again. So I just take one piece of that plan and turn it into many, many more. So here's a really simple way to break down a content strategy easily and simply on a monthly basis. And thanks to a listener, Jamie Chapman, I actually have a little worksheet you can actually use to do this. And it's going to go hand in hand with what I shared last week. So it will have that content framework on it. It's not fancy. It is in the show notes, and it just is like literally something I made in a Google Doc, but I wanted you to be able to have it because people have been telling me that they like need to take notes, and I don't want you to have to take notes for a podcast episode because you're probably walking your dog or doing the dishes. So there is a Google Doc, and I kind of want to stress here about your strategy. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need a special planner for it. You don't need special tools, no bells, whistles, none of that. Like, I just literally use a Google Doc. And I do make it pretty. I put like little pink text at the top that says the name of the month. It doesn't need to be fancy. So 3 simple steps. Number 1, I choose a focus for each month. And I do this for both of my businesses so that it is all encompassing. Like, I don't want to choose a focus for each business separately. So both She Built This and Emily Aborn Consulting get one focus. A theme might look like for example, this month, June 2023, is know your numbers. That could be an example of a theme that you might use. Now you can see how that's speaking to my ideal client helps my ideal client, and it also is going to lead to some of the things that I want it to go to. And I'll get into that in a minute. Your theme might be visibility. It might be, I've had a theme that is very, very specific, like repurposing, where I literally talked about repurposing for an entire month. And no, I did not run out of ideas. I got more ideas. So for me, having a theme, you don't need to choose a theme. I don't care. But for me, having a theme helps me stay focused. It helps me choose what I'm going to speak to at certain seasons. It helps me choose guests and collaborators, and it helps really keep all of my content cohesive. So I'm also simultaneously using these themes to build a body of content. Like I want a library of all sorts of topics. I want to be able to, if somebody asks me a question, say, oh, I've actually done a podcast episode on that. Here's the podcast episode and 3 blogs to go with it. Like I want to create a body of content. And so that's kind of what is happening as I'm using these themes. Is helping me to develop that big library, if you will, of content on all sorts of topics. I did a strategy session recently with a plant-based chef, and we focused her themes on seasonality and like what health-related things her clients would be going through during that time, or what struggles they might be having as they're trying to get their families off to their new summer routines, and they're trying to figure out how to like put dinner on the table or send them to camp with healthy snacks. So you can see that your themes might encompass a element of seasonality or what your client is going through at that time. I've worked with a coach on her theming, and she does her themes around like what the calendar says. So for example, if it's Pride Month, if it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, there's no wrong or right way to choose your theme. And you also don't have to choose a theme. Step number 2, after I do choose a theme or a focus, I pick the 3 goals I want to focus on in my business that month. I like to say, wouldn't it be nice if, or wouldn't it be wonderful if, or this month I would love for this to happen. So for this month, June, the 3 things I want to focus on. I want to start sharing about my Marketing Momentum Lab, which is going to start in July. I want to work with 3 amazing individuals on their website copy. So I need 3, or I would love to work with 3 website clients. And I'm focusing on being a guest on more podcasts. Those are my 3 goals. That's it. You can choose those 3 goals before the theme and get your theme that way. Like that might actually help you to determine your theme, or you could do it afterwards. But just pick like 3 things that your business is focusing on this month. And then from there, step number 3, I list out the actual pieces of content I'm creating each month. I only focus on the big stuff here. Like I said, I'm just using myself as an example. You will adapt this for yourself. I write out the blogs that I plan to write. I write the emails I plan to send, the podcast episodes I do. And then from there, I just sort of work down the list and break all those bigger chunks into my daily pieces of content for social media. It makes it super easy. The benefit is everything, when you take a big picture like that, all those little pieces, they interlink and they lead together and tie together. And it's like one big, happy, multi-layered pie or ice cream sundae, like I've been using as an example. And that's the thing with a strategy. It's like a really big picture, okay? When we get granular, and it can sometimes make it so that it's harder to pivot. Like with a strategy, we're not just putting all our eggs in one basket. It's just creating parts of a whole that all work together to help you achieve those goals and help others to understand what you're saying. It's a really clear purpose. It gives your content a job. It gives your content a really clear purpose and helps you define your goals. One fun approach you could also take is to set your strategy up to focus on a specific audience segment or even a specific audience pain point at one time. Like you could just focus entirely for a whole month on depression or anxiety or loneliness. Like you could focus a whole month on that specific kind of person, or a solopreneur or a mompreneur, like for an entire month or longer. I mean, you could go longer on that. But then once you have a plan in place, it saves you from a lot of oh my God, what am I talking about today? What am I doing today? I'm all over the place. It also can help you, like I said at the beginning, to keep track of what is working and what is not working. Like you will clearly be able to look back and say, this went well, this did not go well. And then as I also mentioned at the beginning, what I really love about a strategy is it helps you to be consistent, both in what you're creating, how you're distributing it, how your message and brand are being perceived across different channels and in different places, and it's consistency around your brand. Like even if you are changing and evolving with your brand, it helps you to be consistent. So now the question is, do you need a content strategy? And I'm going to go ahead and say you don't need anything. Like, yes, it can provide structure and focus and effectiveness. Yes, it allows you to be more intentional in helping engaging with your audience while simultaneously achieving your goals. And no, you don't need one. I think we can all think of somebody in our lives who operates by the seat of their pants and is still successful. We've all seen someone who just like buckles at the thought of structure and a plan, needs to dance to the beat of their own drum, and just wants to have fun and not worry about strategy. And I just have a quick example of this. In my first business in 2014, it was an organic mattress store my husband and I opened together. We had everything planned out strategically. Like we had a business plan, a marketing strategy, a sales strategy, like every single thing was planned out meticulously. And in this business that I started, I just sort of dipped my toes into something and started to go. And I didn't really even know where I was going to end up. And some of that difference was really between being really clear at the beginning of what I wanted to offer, who my clients were, et cetera, et cetera. And with this business, it's really been a matter of like learning. What do people need? Who am I? What am I offering? What do I love to do? So I would say that the difference there, I mean, literally, these have both been 5 years, is that this one has been a longer process. But that was also due to me kind of like learning what I was doing. But when I look back, neither choice was really like more successful than the other. Like they both worked equally well. So if that's you, if you are the kind of person that just does not want to have to worry about strategy, I say more power to you. And who knows, maybe you will be inspired by this episode to sprinkle in just like some of these pieces or these elements as you listen. That is really all I have for today. And one thing I would love to offer you as a listener is this. I do sit down with people and I help them to map out a content strategy as well as generate like all the ideas around it. So if that sounds like something you need, I would love to invite you to book a strategy session with me. Let's call it an intention session. We can focus on anything from content and copy to your marketing and visibility efforts on the whole. But I really invite people like bring specific questions because I can give you answers that are personalized and customized for your unique business. That's the thing with podcasts. The information in podcast is always going to be more general, so it applies to most of the people listening. But it's really often learning about your unique business where you're going to get that like personalized, individualized advice and approach. So if that sounds appealing to you, the link will be in the show notes to book a strategy call with me. And I do try to keep those reasonably priced to just sit down with you and chat. In next week's episode, I'm going to talk more about consistency versus frequency, as well as share some other like myths around the word visibility that I think have been some thoughts I have around things that have been a little misconstrued as they get tossed around the internet. So stay tuned for that. The next Content with Character episode comes out on Tuesday, June 13th, and I will chat with you then. See you next week. Thanks for being here. I'm ever so happy you are. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.